Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are getting into a book that really feels like it exists outside of time. Gabriel García Márquez's masterpiece, 100 Years of Solitude.
It's a classic for a reason.
It is, and it's not just this beautiful, sprawling novel. It's an epic that basically argues your fate was sealed long before you were even born.
It's the definitive history of this totally isolated Colombian town, Macondo, and it follows 7 generations of one family, the Buendias.
But the thing you notice right away is that the story isn't a straight line. Not at all.
No, it's explicitly circular. It uses all this hyperbole, this incredible repetition, and of course magical realism to tell a story about how destiny is just inescapable.
Okay, so let's unpack that for you.
Yeah.
Our sources show that the genius of this structure, this multi-generational thing, isn't just a literary trick. It establishes something really profound that drives the whole story. It's called structural determinism.
Exactly, structural determinism. It's the idea that the very architecture of the story, the family, the town, the patterns, it locks the characters into a certain path no matter what they personally want or do.
So they aren't really choosing their own way.
Not really. They're fulfilling a role that was basically handed down to them by their ancestors.
Which makes the mission for this deep dive pretty clear. We need to trace exactly how these characters get trapped in this relentless, preordained cycle of mistakes. Because the whole story, their entire history, was literally already written.
That is the core mechanism of the whole novel. The entire saga is bound by these mysterious coded parchments left by a gypsy named Melquiades.
Ah, the parchments.
And what we learn at the very, very end is that these documents contain the family's entire history, written in Sanskrit 100 years before any of it happened.
Wow.
So the book is a chronicle of the past and a prophecy of the future at the same time. The characters are just living out a script that's already finished.
That is heavy. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The setting of this trap. The founding of Macondo. Generation 1 starts with this deep foundational fear held by the matriarch, Ursula Iguaran.
Yes. Her entire life is just anchored by this consuming, visceral dread of an ancestral curse.
What's the curse?
The fear is that because she married her cousin, they'll have a child with a pig's tail. And this fear is what makes her husband, José Arcadio Buendía, kill a man, abandon their home, and just go deep into the jungle to find a place so remote no one can ever judge them.
And this founder, José Arcadio Buendía, let's call him JAB, he's driven by this impulsive, almost restless intellectual curiosity. He's not a practical guy.
No, not at all. He's obsessed with abstract knowledge, even if it's totally useless. And that's what leads him to found the isolated town of Macondo.
And that isolation is really the key, right?
It's the key condition for the whole cross to play out.
Yeah.
The only connection they have to the outside world is when the gypsies show up once a year, bringing these bizarre technologies that seem like magic, magnets, telescopes, and ice.
Just the concept of ice is mind-blowing to them. And Melquiades, the gypsy with the parchments, he's central to all this early magic. He's their only real link to the prophetic.
And this early isolation immediately sets up the fragility of their whole world with the famous insomnia plague.
Ah, yes. They literally can't sleep.
Yeah.
But it gets a lot worse than just being tired.
So much worse. The insomnia leads to what's called semantic dementia. They don't just forget things. They start losing the actual meaning and function of objects.
Wait, what exactly is semantic dementia? Are they just forgetting the names for things?
It's deeper. You might remember the word hammer, but you completely forget that it's for hitting nails. It's a total breakdown of logic.
So JAB, the intellectual patriarch, tries to fight this magical problem with the only tool he trusts, rational, empirical knowledge. And that's where the famous labeling campaign comes from.
Exactly. He puts signs on everything. The most famous one is on the cow, and it says, "This is the cow. It must be milked every morning so that it produces milk." He's trying to use science to beat metaphysics.
But it completely fails. The rational approach just doesn't work against fate, and their memory is only restored when Melquiades literally comes back from the dead with a magic potion.
And JB's obsession with knowledge and isolation, that's what leads to his end. He goes mad, and he spends his final days just tied to a chestnut tree, completely alone. Solitude is the beginning and the end for him.
What a tragic, absurd end. Okay, so once that trap of solitude is set, we move into the engine of repetition. His children and grandchildren aren't just individuals, they're archetypes, living out these predetermined scripts.
This is maybe the novel's deepest dive into determinism, and it's all enforced by the family's naming scheme. Ursula tries to control their fate by controlling their names, but all she does is lock them into a few possibilities.
How does a name actually determine their personality?
It creates two main archetypes. If you're named José Arcadio, you are destined to be impulsive, powerfully physical, hedonistic. You're a man of action, but usually destructive action, and it often leads to a violent, early death.
And the other one, the Aureliano archetype.
They're the opposite. Pensive, solitary, intense, intellectual. They are the men of contemplation, but they're destined for this deep, self-imposed isolation and profound disappointment. Your identity isn't a choice. It's basically on your birth certificate.
And the prime example of the Aureliano destiny is Colonel Aureliano Buendía, CAB. You see the political futility just take over his life. He fights in 32 separate civil wars.
And that number isn't just for show. It reflects the real, chaotic, and totally futile reality of Colombian politics at the time. Constant wars, no resolution. He survives 14 assassination attempts, fathers 17 illegitimate sons, all named Aureliano, but the struggle is pointless.
You'd think a man like that, a great revolutionary, would find some meaning, but instead he just gets disillusioned and retreats into this profound solitude.
And this is where the absurdity of the curse really kicks in. He goes into his little laboratory and dedicates the rest of his life to a single, repetitive, solitary task. Tell us about the little golden fish.
It's just, it's so beautifully pointless. He spends years meticulously making these tiny, intricate golden fish, and then he just melts them down and starts all over again, endlessly.
It's the perfect metaphor for his entire life. Whether he was leading a revolution or making jewelry in a dark room, it was all just repetition and futility.
And while he's in the lab, his sister, Amaranta, is this kind of chilling counterpoint of domestic solitude.
She's the embodiment of bitterness and emotional isolation. She spends her life consumed by spite, and her destiny is fulfilled by another meticulous solitary task. She weaves her own burial shroud.
And she's not just preparing for death, she's scheduling it.
Exactly. When the shroud is done, she just announces, okay, I'm leaving now, and dies on her own schedule. The message is clear. Grand political struggle or quiet resentment, it doesn't matter. Solitude wins.
So now we hit this magical apex in this story. The moment Macondo kind of touches the divine with Remedios the beauty.
She is just this otherworldly figure. She has this overwhelming, extraordinary beauty, but she also has this fatal innocence. Her presence alone is destructive.
She's too pure for the world.
She is. She drives men to obsession and death just by existing, but she's completely oblivious to it, like an angel.
And her story culminates in this scene of pure magical realism that everyone remembers. Her ascension.
It's spectacular. She's outside folding sheets one day, and a delicate wind of light just pulls the sheets out of her hands. She starts to rise up, waving goodbye, and just disappears into the upper atmosphere.
That moment, that's the pivot point. It's the end of Macondo's simple magical period. It's like purity itself left the town.
And right after that divine moment, the outside world crashes in. Foreigners arrive not with magic, but with exploitation, the banana company.
And that introduces greed, social conflict, everything. The family's own identity starts to decay too. We get the twins, Aureliano II and José Arcadio II, and their personalities are completely switched.
Right. The hedonistic one is named Aureliano, and the pensive one is José Arcadio. It's a perfect illustration that even when the names seem wrong, the fate is inherited. Destiny is tied to the archetype, not the individual.
And the environment itself starts to reflect this decay. The strain of this new, exploitative modernity is mirrored by 4 years, 11 months, and 2 days of constant destructive reign.
It's this symbol of irreversible moral and physical decay. And that sets the stage for the town's greatest trauma, which is rooted entirely in realism, not magic.
The Banana Massacre. José Arcadio II organizes a strike against the company, and the government responds with horrific violence. The military massacres thousands of workers. It's modeled on a real historical event in Colombia.
And this is the novel's deepest engagement with social realism. But the state's response is where the magical realism comes back in a really chilling way. Political amnesia.
The collective delusion is staggering. The authorities just deny the massacre ever happened. They claim nothing occurred, and they erase it from public memory.
And this is where the novel's genius really shines. José Arcadio II is the only survivor, and he's left with this agonizing, solitary burden of memory in a town that chooses to forget. It suggests that state violence and political erasure are more fantastic, more terrifying than any supernatural event.
That's powerful. And after that political erasure, the town loses its biological anchor of memory. Ursula Iguaran, who fought the cycles for over a century, finally dies.
Yeah, she's over 120 years old, and in her final years, she's blind and can't tell the present from the past. Her death is the final irreversible loss of Macondo's ancestral memory. The town is doomed.
So we enter the final phase, the preordained zero point. The Buendia house is decaying, infested. Aureliano Babylonia, the final Aureliano archetype, grows up in total seclusion, obsessed with one thing.
Deciphering Melchiades' parchments, he has that same passion for knowledge as his great-great-grandfather JB.
And the foundational curse, the one Ursula dreaded for 100 years, it finally happens.
The ultimate act of incest. He falls in love with his aunt, Amaranta Ursula. She gives birth to the cursed child with the pig's tail, and she dies immediately.
The cycle is closed.
It is. Aureliano is left alone with this monstrous infant, but he has the key. As a hurricane builds outside, he finally decodes the Sanskrit parchments.
This is the collapse of all time. He realizes that the writings are the precise chronicle of his family, written a century before. The wars, the fish, the ascension. It was all just a mechanism for the prophecy to be fulfilled.
And as he reads the final lines, the windstorm hits. He sees the infant being devoured by fire ants, fulfilling that ancient fear, and he deciphers the epigraph. The first in line is tied to a tree, and the last is being eaten by ants.
And the very last sentence confirms it all. That races condemned to 100 years of solitude did not have a second opportunity on Earth, and the hurricane just obliterates Macondo and the entire family line. The 0 point is reached.
So if you pull back, the entire complicated magical existence of this family was just a scroll unrolling toward a predetermined end. Their solitude, their failure to learn from memory, it made the curse inevitable.
And the sources really confirm that while the book is famous for the supernatural stuff, the flying and all that, the real horror that seals their doom is the Banana Massacre. And the political decision to just wipe it from history.
It shows that collective amnesia and state violence are maybe the most destructive forces there are. It's a brilliant critique of history and memory.
It is. And since the sources confirm the characters are basically interchangeable archetypes whose fate is set by their name and their ancestors, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Given all this structural determinism, what singular conscious action, if any, could any Buendia have taken from the founder JB to the final Aureliano throughout the whole century to actually exercise individual agency and break the cycle of solitude for good?